Thank you. Absolutely. So we'll call the meeting to order at 6:01. And Chief, if you can note the roll. Item 3 is the approval of the minutes from November 22nd, 2023. Is there a motion? I'll move approval.
Second.
All right. Any additions or corrections? None. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? All right, we can move on to item 4, which is the appearance section. We have a number of appearances, and because we have a number of appearances, like I have a few things that I've shared at other meetings when we have a larger room like this to help make sure that we're efficient and that people can be heard when they're speaking. And so I wrote down some notes, so please bear with me, but keep in mind that the focus of this group and this committee is around public safety and public safety itself, okay? I know an item on the agenda might have you that you want to speak on a variety of pieces connected to it. This group is focused on the public safety piece. So I would encourage you to limit the information that you're sharing to that kind of specific aspect. Second item, because of the number of people, I will time you. That's not with the intention of cutting you off midstream. It's with the intention of making sure that we can hear from everybody in a reasonable time. So if you hear that, I'll ask that you just kind of wrap up your thoughts with that last kind of breath that you have, all right? The third item is oftentimes it's frustrating for people in public appearance sections that they're wanting some dialogue or discussion back. And unfortunately, that's not how meetings like this work. So during the appearance section, you're here, you can provide your information, but we aren't able to engage in a dialogue back and forth. And when that section closes and we're on the agenda item, we really can't engage in a dialogue either. There have been times where someone from the committee might have a clarifying question, and they might ask that clarifying question. That's fine to answer, but we really can't get in the back and forth and then just let people know that up front so they're not frustrated when that might happen. My last one, this is the most important. Remember, like the people that serve on this committee, they're volunteers and they're here sharing like their knowledge, expertise in this area around public safety. And we value that very background. And it's important that they're able to share that in a way that helps us make the best decision we can from a public safety standpoint as we move forward. So, kind of understand? Like, these are not highly paid volunteers, they're free paid volunteers. And we really honor and want them to be able to keep coming back and participating with us. So please be kind to one of them. I think that is it. And so I don't forget people on Zoom. I'm going to start there and then we'll start with the group. I noticed one person that came in late. Did you want to speak on that item?
So we've got a lot of people already, so I'm good.
If we get to that point, you just raise your hand and I'll make sure I call it. Okay.
Mary Ann is next to Larry Reed.
Oh, perfect. Mary Ann, we have you up first for our appearance section.
Thank you. I was inspired to speak to you tonight by a conversation I had with Angela Davis about the little boys who died in Sun Prairie after falling through the ice. I thought about how we could prevent something like this happening in Monona and what were the protections in place that kept me off the ice growing up in Monona. I also thought about
Well, Mary Ann, can you hang on 1 second? We have a couple of people that don't have their mute button clicked. You might want to click it unless you're speaking. That way we won't get an echo and we won't hear any background noise. Thank you. Mary Ann, you're back up.
Okay. I thought about how we could prevent something like this happening in Monona and what were the protections in place that kept me off the ice, thin ice, growing up in Monona. I also thought about how due to climate change, the ice is less stable than when I was a child, and how many people, both adults and children, have less access to information about unsafe ice conditions. When I was a child, the newspaper ran daily ice fishing reports, including ice conditions on the sports page. My mother had lost a grade school classmate when he and his father went through the ice in their car. It was after this that Madison passed a law against driving on the ice. She would tell us this story every year. Getting the word out to people about unsafe ice conditions will require a multifaceted approach. Police, both Monona and Dane County Sheriff, fire, public works, park and recreation, schools, WVMO, the city newsletter, scout groups, and even church announcements all have a role to play in education and awareness. Monona has many access points to water with the parks, boat landings, and public access to lagoons, the river, and the lake. Some ideas to consider would be a simple pictograph signs on wooden sticks at access points. Twice a year, early winter and spring when the ice gets rotten, a program could be presented at Winnequa School by any of the following, either police, fire, public works, park and rec, on ice safety. Similar to what the fire department does in October for fire safety. Public service announcements for the middle school, high school, WVMO, church announcements, the city website, and social media when Dane County Sheriff's Office gives an unsafe ice warning would all be factors that would help with education and awareness. Thank you for your time.
All right, thank you, Mary Ann. Next is Sarah, are you here to speak on an item or to listen in? Sarah, you're on mute if you're trying to speak. All right, we will come back in case you're not there for a second. Second, we have a phone number that looks like a Minnesota phone number. Not sure if you're here just to listen into the meeting or if you're here to speak on an item. We'll come back to you and give you another chance at the end here. All right, so I think we got all of them. The first up, we have Cindy. And Cindy, you wanted to speak regarding Madison Metro.
First, I have concerns and have had concerns about Madison Metro. But I would just like to talk about safety and bring up the fact that in Monona, as you all know, we have very few sidewalks. How safe is it to board a bus when you may not have a curb that you can board from, particularly if you might be handicapped, you might not be so steady on your feet, but you're not disabled. I would think if you're going to have a bus coming through Monona often, and these are large buses, I may add, they're not electric, they're diesel. So I wouldn't say they're exactly green, and they're full size, so they're very large. They can hold a lot of people. And so a lot of people like myself who are not always so steady in the winter might be trying to board. For me to stand out in the street on a sloppy day like this because there are no sidewalks, that's not safe. That's what I want to say. So I would bring that up, and I would like to know what Madison Metro has offered, since we're not going to put sidewalks or curbs on all of our streets. Yes, there are some on Winnequa, but I'm not sure that there's a lot of density in Winnequa. The second question or subject I'd bring up is, do we know in Monona where most people, where the density is, the people that might want to be riding? You know, you can choose St. Stephen's Church because they have a pantry, and that might be something definitely to think about, and that's Pheasant. We have assisted care at Heritage. We will have an apartment building that burnt, but eventually it will have elderly people there. And we have some apartments. Each apartment is just right now 8. But those people, 8 units on several of them, and actually more on towards Frostwoods. That would be something to think about, but again, there are no sidewalks there. Eventually Village Lanes is going to build apartments, so that will be a density also that we should consider. And I would like Monona to look into that.
Thank you, sweetie. Next, we have Jody. Jody,
I'd
3
like-
minutes to go fast. I know
I'm
you got a
gonna
lot
go
here.
fast,
All right.
okay? I do not believe in the C3 road running through Monona. Right now, I wanna concentrate on Nichols Road. Nichols Road is the pathway for emergency vehicles to get to Monona Drive. I have a map here that shows 705 Nichols Road. The width of this road is only 30 feet wide. Here is a diagram of a bus. It is 10.5 to 11 feet wide. A parked car on a road can take up anywhere from 6.5 to 9 feet. A box truck can take up anywhere from 8 feet to 11 feet. A fire truck is 8 feet wide. My safety concerns are parked cars on Nichols Road with a Metro bus and a fire truck trying to navigate through this. At a 30-foot wide road, does the safety of these vehicles leave enough room for all these vehicles to operate on this road? The probability of this happening is high because since Madison Metro will be traveling on Nichols Road Monday through Friday, 6 a.m. to 8 p.m. every 30 minutes. For the safety reasons, I do not believe that Madison Metro should be sharing the same roads of our emergency use vehicles. My second thing is, back in the late 1980s, when the Metrobus did run on Pheasant Hill Road, my family and I and our 2 young children, it was an icy morning. We were out on the road and we lost control at the bottom of Pheasant Hill Road. We could not move. At the top of the hill was the Madison Metro bus. It also lost control and came down the hill at a high rate of speed and hit our car broadside. We flew across the road, we flew up the curb 20 feet through the neighbor's yard, we hit a side of a garage. Fortunately, nobody was hurt. It was a very scary experience to have to be hit by that impact of that large bus. I am here to tell you that accidents can happen. We are proof of that. And it bothers me to think that this Metro bus, especially down in this wonderful, beautiful city area that our past mayors and city people have created, especially during the summertime, when kids move across Nichols Road to get back and forth to summer school, to the library, to the pool, to the green park, to the tennis courts. This area is used a lot, and I have a lot of concerns about the Metro bus running up and down this road. Thank you.
Next up, we have Bill.
Yeah, hi, my name is Bill Progus, and I spent the first 35 years of my life as a researcher in the College of Agriculture, UW. And what I did was all about data. We were measuring stuff and crunching the numbers, because numbers were important. We had to have the data. And I'm gonna assume that when the people here in this committee and the alders that make the decision to run these buses through Monona, somehow, somewhere, they're looking at data. They've got numbers to back up their decisions. And I don't know where I would find that. And I'm just requesting that whatever you have, whatever kind of data you have in terms of, you know, how the buses fit on the roads, as Jody said, if a bus is 10 or 11 feet wide and a car is 9 feet wide and the road's 30 feet wide, simple math tells you there's not a whole lot of room left. I live on Winnequa Road, and everybody that has traveled Winnequa Road, and Winnequa Road, I'm guessing, is probably the second most widely traveled road in Monona after Monona Drive. And there's bikers, walkers, dog walkers, all sorts of folks using the road. I walk my dog down Winnequa Road just about every day. Not because I like to walk on Winnebago Road, because I live there and I gotta get off that road to get onto a slower street. And I realized today that if Winnebago Road is 30 feet wide, days like this, it's actually 25 or 24 feet wide, because I got 3 feet of snow piled up on the side. So it's not conducive to driving these big buses, but 11 feet wide, did you say they were? Something like that?
8.5 feet wide.
8.5
Sorry,
feet wide?
They're 8.5 feet wide.
8.5 feet, there's parking on one side, there's no sidewalks for pedestrians, for pedestrian traffic.
When you take in the mirrors though, it will go up to 10.5 feet.
So
Just so
the
you
mirror is
And
a 3
I
feet.
would
wide.
imagine getting hit in the head with a mirror is probably not a pleasant thought. So I would just like the committee here to think about maybe making it, whatever data you have more available. Put it on the website so it's easy to find. And I was looking at this map over here, and there's Monona, and we can see big busy roads, and there's a lot of little white lines there. And it's easy to see the white lines are streets, and let's run a bus down here. You know, that seems like a good plan because people want to travel these streets, right? I don't see white lines when I look out my window. I see my neighbors, my family, and my friends traveling down the road. I don't see just lines. I want folks to think about who is being impacted, how they're being impacted. And if there's data that shows this, let's have a look at it. Thanks.
Next, we have Rachel.
Hi. So I've been a realtor for 20 years, so I've know Monona and why people moved to Monona, and I just moved here myself. And unfortunately, I was not able to attend the meetings to object to the C3 route because I strongly disagree with it. From a safety, I feel like people move here with their families and their kids because they can kind of run freely like they used to when we were kids. Just run around before everything got so busy and fast. And I feel a little threatened in many ways by a city bus moving through here. I just moved from off Milwaukee Street. And I moved here for the quiet. So I'm a little upset that the buses are going to be coming through Monona for that reason, but so it's just really unsafe. I feel like it was really nerve-wracking. My kid is 5, he rides his bike. There's not a lot of sidewalks. So even if we are going to ride, we're gonna have to cross one of the roads where there will be city buses. And yeah, we can stop and look both ways, but like, it's just a matter that the kids just fly. And at some point they just ride around by themselves. And Monona is always known to be this super quiet place where there are owls and there are birds and the animals. And I worried about the animals' safety, to be honest. Like, where are they all gonna go? The noise pollution is something. So I do worry about the safety of the nature and birds and owls and all of the things that we love to see roaming around here. So I disagree with it. I feel like a lot of I would love to know who primarily uses the buses. Doesn't seem like there's that many. If you crack down how many users there were in 2022, it comes down to like maybe 12 people use the bus. 12 times a day, I mean. 12 people a day, which could be 6 if they're going one way and coming back. So I'd like to know where those people are, and maybe if it is, maybe the less risky place would be to like just go like maybe where they are. Maybe it's off Owen where all the apartments are, and that it says in here the density of senior housing off Owen. So like maybe there is a little loop that we can do, but to come through Winnebago and down by the school, I just don't see any for it. And primarily for safety with all of the kids, like that corner coming around the library, it's intense already. Yeah, that's me in a nutshell. I mean, I have a lot to say about it, but nothing that really involves safety. But I just feel like there need to be more sidewalks, more lighting, more. Have we considered who's gonna pay for all of those expenses if the route is going to go where it's going to be?
There is a blind spot on Nichols Road by Schluter Road.
Oh, hey,
And, okay, I can help her out.
no.
Okay.
So they just, I know there
No
are.
trading. No trading.
And like to make the road safe though, it is going to be very expensive. So like, it's so expensive to fully make this safe. I love the other routes, but I see 3.
Don't feel like we need to take off from this. Just because they have.
I know I talk really fast. Okay.
Amy?
Yep, that's me.
Hi, my name's Amy. I've been a Monona resident for 15 years. So we've been here for a long time. Moved here as a single person, have since added a husband and 2 kids. I have a 5 and 7-year-old, and we are avid walkers and bikers. My kids were both riding their scoot bikes around the streets of Monona by 2, and now they're both on 2 wheels. They walk or bike to Winnequa every day. We chose, about 3 to 5 years ago, we were deciding whether to stay in Monona before our kids started school or to move to the near west side to be close to cousins and family. And one of the reasons we chose to stay in Monona is because of the walkability, rideability. I felt like in Monona, despite no sidewalks, there's not a ton of traffic. And because we live pretty close to the parks, to the schools, to the library, like I envision my kids taking off in the summer and going to swim practice in the morning by themselves. Okay, you can ride your bike to your friends' houses. And that's one of the reasons we chose to stay. If we moved to the near west side, like there's not this density of like this awesome design of Monona where you can really get to the parks and the school and the library and everything really easy for kids. So the idea of a bus coming down Nichols or down Winnequa, say if one of my kids wants to ride their bike to a friend's house, is honestly terrifying. I mean, I've been I ride my bike to work at the UW hospital. I've been a nurse at the Children's Hospital for 17 years. Sorry, I'm not a public speaker, and when I get emotional, so I sound a little choked up. It's because I'm not good at public speaking. I've been a nurse at the Children's Hospital for 17 years, and in better weather than this, I ride my bike to the Children's Hospital. So I traverse the city of Madison a lot by bike, and I've had quite a few encounters with Madison Metro myself, despite wearing, lighting. I've got my lighting in my pocket. I'm very safety first. Despite lighting, bright colors and everything, I've come very close to, being hit by a Madison Metro several times. Luckily, it's never happened, despite, I'm sure those drivers doing their best. They're trying to stay on time and get where they need to go. And I know that my kids, they're going somewhere, not going to have the awareness of what's going on around them as much as I do as a grown adult. So I have concerns about even kids who live on Winnequa, Owen, Pheasant Hill. How are those kids going to go out and learn to ride their bikes on the streets that they live in? I feel like that should be something the kids in Monona can do safely, and that parents can feel like, yes, you can go ride your bike 4 houses down to your friend's house and feel like that's safe. If they know that a Madison Metro bus is coming down every 30 minutes, I mean, I don't know that any parent would say, yeah, go ahead, head down the street, just ride in the grass. And I know that I was told during a conversation with our neighbor Teresa, who's, an awesome, wrap it up, that sidewalks are coming. And I'm sure that everyone wants sidewalks, but as a longtime resident of McKenna, I can tell you that sidewalks on McKenna took about 10+ years to happen. So I want to be realistic about how long it's really going to take for sidewalks to happen. My last comment is that as nobody ever wants to think about the bad things that happen. And so sure, buses, kids, it'll be fine. I can tell you as somebody who's been a pediatric nurse, I know, you guys work in emergency services, bad things happen. I've taken care of those children, and, I've comforted the parents, and we need to think about the safety of our kids in Monona. Thank you.
Katie?
Yeah, that's me.
Hi.
Hi, I'm Katie. I really don't have too much to add to what everybody else has already said, so I won't take my 3 minutes, but I live here with my kids. We have 3 kids. And same as Amy, we bike, we walk, we're all over the place. The one thing that I will add that has struck me as I'm sitting here in terms of the safety is that I live on McKenna. Bus is going to go down Nichols, up Dean, which is the walk area to the Winnequa school. So that is where we are encouraged to walk, where we are encouraged to be on the streets, where there's tons of kids. The corner of McKenna and Greenway there's so many bikers, and there's just people that are out in those areas, and to run a bus through all of that, where we're encouraging people to be out and to be active, just feels real unsafe. Same with Winnequa. I mean, that's part of the lake loop. People come to our area to come through there and they are not looking to get hit or to be scrunched on a road with parked cars and a bus. And I've had issues on Winnequa myself with cars already, so I can't imagine a large bus, but so that's it. I think that it's feels unsafe in a walkable city.
Thank you, Kate. Next is Caitlin.
Thanks, everybody. Thanks for being on the committee. I really do mean it. Like, I beyond this issue, I have very much admired the staff on this committee and I've looked at your minutes from the other issues. So this is a critical issue and I imagine you all feel a lot of pressure too, because right, safety, I mean, really is a life or death thing. And so honestly, a lot of thanks on that. I got my little notes jotted down here. Wanted to talk to you guys about my concerns, specifically about that C3 route portion of the metro deal that we're looking at here. We specifically chose Monona. We moved from Madison to Monona specifically because of safety and it being kind of quieter, a little more off the grid, a little more peace for our kids and for us. I have otherwise lived in the city in Madison or in Minneapolis. Otherwise been living next to full-size commercial vehicles and public transit. So when I speak about my perspective on it, it's from living it the rest of my adult life, other than being here, not imagining things. And so that's kind of a personal piece. Another personal piece is a friend of mine who became personally disabled from a metro driver in the last few years. You will not find him on the statistics because his injuries were unknown at the time. And when the family circled back around to report it, the footage was no longer in place. So sometimes people say, oh, the statistics aren't great. I just want to remind everybody that statistics don't represent everything that happens. I would just ask that the committee take it seriously in terms of what streets are appropriate to schedule repeated commercial, 40-foot commercial traffic twice an hour when we think about walkers, children, the elderly, unskilled and skilled cyclists. It's a concern to me that kind of this single family residential route is a priority for adding more vehicles, kind of like twice an hour, 6 a.m. to 9 p.m. In particular ones that don't already have a sidewalk and a bike lane. Remembering that you're not supposed to bike on the sidewalk. Just want everyone to remember that. So even if we have a sidewalk. And I just am looking to you guys to kind of recommend that we consider that part when we're planning transport for walkers and cyclists. It's like we could ask for things like, oh, we need a pedestrian light, like we talk about the whole route is circling Winnequa Elementary. So it's really hard to get to the 3 sides of the lake, which is the margins of this residential community. But how are little people getting across the margins and to those places? Those are also where parks and friends live. What does that mean? No way. Right, I got this. Let's see.
You have 10 seconds.
The last part I just want to say is I'm walking my kids back and forth to school. These Nelson bus drivers are amazing. They will wait for me forever. They do wait for us because guess what? They can't get through when we're on the street safely. We have had the Nelson bus stuck with their tail onto Nichols while the 3 of us trying to make it, 2 cars, both sides of the street. And I've got a little person and they just wait. And that's not super safe, honestly, for them, for other cars, for vehicles that get annoyed and come through there. I just want to say they can't get through when we're walking and I'm the grown-up making sure my kids are paying attention because otherwise they're not. I don't see that changing anytime soon. So thank you.
Thank you, Kim. Next up is Grace.
nervous now about this.
I would have less than notice,
It's like a
like
bird or something.
ringers, but. I'm not hot, not too much anything.
You
Yeah,
won't get me.
this is,
Yeah, Grace.
this gets me out of bed. in the
Oh
morning,
gosh,
so
you pushed
you
it.
guys-
Okay, my name is Grace
Bear with me.
Wenham. I am both a resident of Monona and a Monona business owner. I'm a pediatric dentist and my office, Madison Pediatric Dental and Orthodontics, is located in Monona. As it so happens, all of my partners and specialists in my group happen to be residents of Monona. We serve many children and their families in this community. So I'm here today not advocating not only for the safety of my own young children, my partner's children, the children of our family and friends, but also my patients and the families I serve. I am most concerned that the proposed route does not have bike lanes and sidewalks along its entirety. Eventually, city buses will be traveling through the heart of Monona. A lot of people have talked about this, Winnequa School, Winnequa Park, Dream Park, tennis courts, skateboard park and pool, and these roads are in heavy use. Most concerning are the parts of the bus route, like the stretch on Winnequa Road, which is specifically, I think, the biggest safety concern, that not only lack a bike lane or sidewalk, but also allows curbside parking. Consider already the dangers of young pedestrians and bikers traveling on these roads, having to navigate two-way traffic without a sidewalk, without a protected bike lane, and around a car parked on the curb. Adding large city bus to this already hazardous condition is unsafe. The U.S. Department of Transportation Federal Transit Administration's publication entitled Improving Safety for Pedestrians and Bicyclists Accessing Transit discusses in depth the extensive planning that is required for the safe coexistence of bus transit routes with pedestrian and bike traffic. I gave this publication to the Transit Committee in October 2022. Noted in DOT publications are the greater dangers buses pose to pedestrians and bicyclists. Larger vehicles have more blind spots, take 40% longer to stop due to their weight, have a 42-foot turning radius, which requires them to cross into oncoming lanes. Each of these dangers pose an even greater risk to our young commuters, who would be even harder to see in a blind spot and are less likely to be able to react quickly to rescue themselves. The publication's recommendations for safety include bike lanes for bicyclists, sidewalks for pedestrians, crosswalks along transit routes, increased street lighting for visibility, and pedestrian and bicycle signals. I am here tonight to ask you, the Public Safety Committee, to make a recommendation to City Council that the crucial safety measures supported by the Department of Transportation are in place along the current proposed bus route before the final proposal is accepted. On a side note, I do want to say that I did speak to somebody personally who is on one of the committees. I had mentioned this, just like my personal concern. It was a social setting. And I said, here's where I live. I'm really concerned about my kiddos biking. I do want to say that person, although very kind, started suggesting, well, different routes for my child to get to avoid the buses. And quite frankly, I think that's a concession that basically it's unsafe for my child to get from my home to their school. And then by proposing different routes, I think there's a problem there, a safety problem there. So just wanted to add that. I really appreciate you guys letting me speak tonight. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Next is Doug. What? There, I'll stand up. You were hiding back there.
Yeah, my name is Doug Wood. I'm the council president, currently the acting mayor while the mayor's on vacation. Just wanted to say a couple of brief words. I don't think I'll take 3 minutes, but
The time anyways. Yeah.
well, I was gonna say, Grace, I think you could do the disclaimers at the end of ads when they have to read stuff. for the-
I'm a fan. I'm very, I know.
No, so I guess when I saw this was on the public safety agenda last week, I guess, I was concerned that it could become seen as a rehash of a decision we've already made. So I just want to, and I'm sorry I missed the first couple minutes. I thought the meeting started at 6:30, so. Just to be clear, the city council has already adopted resolution directing staff to negotiate a contract with Madison Metro. So that part's done. There were also 4 parameters in that resolution, one of which was to follow the C3 route. I think that's still the direction. I think what Alder Holmquist felt like some of the questions he had or concerns he had hadn't been adequately addressed. He can speak for himself, but and wanted to have an opportunity to have more discussion on it. So my understanding is the proposal tonight is simply whether and what recommendations, if any, to make to the city negotiating team as they enter into those negotiations with Madison Metro. And if they feel like we need to go back and look at the route some more, or get a plan, at least in development, for improvements on Winnequa Road, that's really gonna be up to them. So just,
Can I ask, when you say up to them, who is them?
And when do they meet?
it's the city negotiating team, which I don't know that we have for sure determined who is going to be on that yet. I know the city administrator will be on it. I'm not sure who else will be. But the other thing I did want to say that obviously many of you are familiar to me because I've seen you at our council meetings on actually the topic of whether to enter into negotiations with Metro. So before that happened, the Transit Commission spent probably a year and a half or so, maybe longer, analyzing the issue, meetings, several, I think two or three public information meetings, 2 different surveys. So, they have a wealth of information, and they had a lot of time that went into developing where we're at today. So that's really pretty much all I wanted to say. Good luck to you guys in your discussion. There you go, 3 minutes, wow.
Yeah, perfect time. Thank you, Ben. We've had some emails here, but I'll go back to Sarah. Oh, yeah.
Alder Holmquist, I believe Sarah is one of your emails you have in your hand that you and Chief Cheney received last night, I believe. I think she had said she just posted a note in Zoom asking if her email could be read.
She did, right, I see it. And yes, Sarah, I've gone through to highlight items within the emails to keep me within the 3 minutes of reading them. So I'll do that shortly. And then we have a telephone of 612-554-2123. Not sure if you're here to speak on an issue or just listen in. And you're from Minnesota. Would you call into the meeting?
Yeah, that's me. No,
Okay. All right, we'll move on to the emails that we have. The first one is from Emily Voice, and through the variety of items that are shared, the concern is we see the amount of traffic on Nichols firsthand every morning. No speed bumps, people are constantly speeding. I'm trying to get kids to school in the morning and quite frankly, any time of the day. Adding any more unnecessary bus traffic to this road is a safety concern in their perspective. Goes on to indicate that when they were a child on the Metro bus prior to the Monona Transit, there was an accident where their car got hit by a bus on Pleasant
She's
Hill
my
Road.
daughter.
I was gonna say, I thought this was you, but I was like,
she's
no.
my daughter.
Okay. So shared the same story of an accident on Pleasant Hill on an icy day, spinning us into the yard, missing a tree in a garage. And finishes up by saying that if you're gonna send buses through the city, we need sidewalks, speed bumps, and the streets are going, whichever streets they're going down. Our next item is from Rachel Kugel, and Rachel shares that her biggest concern is the route running on the streets that don't have sidewalks or bike paths. And also indicates concerns regarding bus traffic during the 30 minutes before and after the start and end day of Winnequa School, to support safety walking and biking. And then finishes with, I think that anything that we can do to limit the time traveling through these already crowded streets is a must. Our next item is from Amy Bussey. She shares that she's very concerned and expressed this concern over the safety of having a bus on the streets with no sidewalks and young children walking even this morning on a very foggy day. Talks about site issues during the fog. And therefore writing to express views against having metro buses traveling down residential streets throughout Medina and against, and indicates that they are against the current route. And finishes by saying that I think a bus on our major corridors of Monroe Drive and Broadway make much more sense. Our next item is from Jessica Barber. And states this Central Winnequa corridor is a hub for walkers, bikers, lake loopers, cross-country teams and kids, not kiddos, sorry. Kids, but has seen very little improvement for pedestrian safety. We've asked for speed bumps, bike lanes, sidewalks, one ways, anyway, to improve the safety, but nothing has happened. It's a straightaway that encourages fast driving, and there's also parking on one side. Talks about not being anti-bus, however, the infrastructure of Winnequa does not have room for a bus, parked car, parents and strollers, and another car in the opposite direction. I'd like to ask how many residential streets in the metro frequency in Madison have no sidewalks for pedestrians. Next item, this one is from Sarah Minton, and that's supposed to be Sarah. And indicates concern about buses traveling on Dean Avenue from the proposed C3 metro route. The west end of Dean past Waterman Way is part of the walk zone for Winnequa School. And they included 2 PDFs of the walk zone. Many of the school children have to cross Dean when walking to and from school and getting dropped off or picked up by the school bus. Also indicates the dangerous 5-way intersection of Dean, Rothman, Winnequa. And that's part of the proposed route and heavily traveled by children going to and from school or getting on and off buses. She indicates that, in her opinion, is unsafe for kids. As a side, when traffic is already way too fast and unsafe. And indicates that she recommends multiple stop signs to slow down traffic and push button light up walk signals to cross. And talks about a variety of locations across Dean, Schluter Beach, the Bait Ice Cream Shop, and then the opposite way going to Winnequa School in London. Another item was the Schluter Road Nichols intersection at the top of the hill by the library, and observations of regular vehicles needing to slam on brakes here and pedestrians unsure when it's safe to cross due to the poor sight lines in the place. Finishes up by indicating the Pleasant Hills, particularly in the school walk zone. Like Winnequa Road, it doesn't have sidewalks, and buses should not be running on streets without sidewalks, in her opinion.
She's asking to share the walk zone maps.
Okay. We'll get to that in a second. I think you have to make them a co-host for.
I have them, so I can play it at whatever you like.
Okay.
If you like.
Yeah, I'll do them at the end and then we can briefly put them up. Let's see. This one is from Abby. Indicates our concern is the clearance of a bus would need to travel down the streets. Proposed specifically Winnequa and Pleasant Hill, that do not have sidewalks, and wraps up by talking about it talks about referring to the elderly and accessing, particularly in areas that have sidewalks, and is indicating that it's potentially dangerous with the access piece related to slips in the winter, falls, and other traffic related concerns. And that was signed by Abby and Jason, but only written from Then I have next message is from Hannah Hartman. Hannah writes and says that she is extremely concerned about children and families walking and biking to school in parks along roads that don't have sidewalks. It goes on to say that the community has made so many improvements to the roads to improve safety for walker and bikers, and adding large buses to our streets, in her opinion, will set us back on this progress. The city did significant data gathering for the 2019 pedestrian bike safety plan, and wants to make sure that information is being considered when determining the C3 route. goes on to talk about making biking unsafe on the roads, which will be ones that the buses are, the impact on the roads by having additional buses of wear and tear, I'm summarizing a paragraph here, will cause safety concerns with the condition of the road to bikers, in her opinion. Finishes by saying that the route should avoid all residential streets at all costs. We have one from Tamor, and shares that we do not want metro buses on the residential streets, but does not go into particularly any specific safety aspects, but just indicates opposition. Is there anybody that came in late that didn't have an opportunity to speak that would like to speak? Doesn't mean
I
you have
actually
to.
would like to speak just a little bit on Pheasant Hill. My name's Patty Allen. And
Patty, hang on, I'll write.
Patty Allen,
Hang on, I'm gonna give you some ground rules because you showed up late.
fair enough.
So Patty, we went through a variety of things at the beginning. I just don't want you to get caught off guard,
No,
right?
I'm just gonna talk a little bit about where I live and the safety concern. I have.
Perfect. This group's focus is on the safety aspect, not the other aspects. I have an annoying timer that will be on, I don't know
I
when
won't
it came
take
in,
the 3
so
seconds.
awesome, thank you.
So, I did talk a little bit about this, council meeting. I live on Pheasant Hill, right at the bottom of the hill, Stone Terrace meets Pheasant Hill, right where I live. It is a safety concern of mine. I watched last week when the snowplow came by, it trying to get up Stone Terrace from both ways. It could not, okay? So if snowplow can, and it was kind of his second time around, it wasn't a full snow. It's a concern. People come down Stone Terrace or Pheasant Hill, and if that bus is coming, it's scary. It's very scary. We have kids walking from Nichols to and from school. We have bikers, we have a lot of walkers, dogs, kids, everyone. My other concern is Pheasant Hill and Owen Road. The sight lines there, not good. There's parked cars there. Both, they're coming from 2 different ways and both sides are hills. And you can't see well there. So another concern of mine. So I just want you to look at the concerns that we are all talking about and make sure this is the decision that you want. That's really all I have. Thanks.
Thank you.
Yes, please. I'm not gonna help you spell my name
I
either,
was gonna say.
because I don't want to. No, it's CONSWELLO. Last name's the easy part, Crawford.
All right, and you heard the same speech.
I did.
You are up.
Thank you. I also live on Pheasant Hill Road. I happen to live more close to the top. Our homes just happen to be 2 houses away. I will say this last snow, we had 2 people knock on our door because they could not move off of our street. They literally were stuck in front of our home. Obviously, that would be a concern if we're talking about buses going through on our street. I have a mega concern with our roads in the way it looks already, with a lot of the potholes and different things, especially at the end of Pheasant Hill and Owen. I spoke about this before. We basically don't have any streetlights. There's one right at my house. So yay me, but there's no other ones. I think maybe one down by Patty's house and one maybe by the church. It was pointed out previously that our road has only 600 some odd cars in comparison with another road that had 800. Our street is only 2 blocks. So the fact that it only had 600 as opposed to a street that's 5 or 6 blocks had 800, I mean, the ratio doesn't work out. So in my opinion, that makes it less safe. My other concern is currently we are the thoroughfare for all of our emergency vehicles. So fire, police, anything like that, all of those vehicles go down our street. Previously, when I had asked if we could even have speed bumps on our road, was told, no, we're not going to do that because that would inhibit the ability for our fire trucks and things to go up and down our street. My other safety concern, it's not warm outside right now, but both the track teams from both Monona Grove and La Follette run our street. Because it's a hill and you can do really great sprints on it. They're crazy, but you can. And I guess that's just kind of my last piece. There's a million different people that walk and bike. And I think that our street is used as a way to avoid Monona Drive. And I think that given that it is a way to avoid Monona Drive, that let's not add another vehicle to our road and have it actually travel Monona Drive, where all of those different precautions have already been set up, rather than trying to put a Band-Aid on water, which is what I see this would be, having it go down Pheasant Hill Road from a safety perspective. I'm out.
Thank you. No one else? Got Sarah. We'll try the phone number one last time. We have a phone that's called in 612-554-2123. Are you here to speak on an item? All right. Before we close the current section, if you can show the maps to augment the Sarah's email. So this was a map to, and hopefully Sarah, you'll tell me if I got it wrong. You were including this in the packet to show where the walk zone is for the elementary school and where the walk zone is in comparison to the busing zone. And if I remember Sarah's email correctly, it was referencing that in her opinion, the walk zone is that the route is covering much of the walk zone.
Could I have a little help on the orange and gray areas, please?
The gray area is the walk zone.
Okay, thank
Yep.
you.
All right,
So there's two different walk zones depending on how old you are.
correct. And this is the first map.
Yeah, and here is the second map. I'm displaying them.
Clearly, this is for the younger kids. Smaller walk zone. The other one was for the older kids, a bigger walk zone. So it shows the two different coverage areas for the walk zone. All
One
right.
more favor. Can I have it maybe a little bit larger?
Oh,
I'm
that,
just asking for stuff. I apologize, but
Well, you're testing me, zoom in.
I know it's on. Or you can press control and scroll forward.
You tell me you do it.
Plus.
Bottom right.
Yeah, it's also in here.
One more click.
All right, yeah, that's plenty good.
So that's the much younger kids, which is really bordered by somewhat Winnequa Park, Dean. McKenna.
Yeah, we're just a little bit far
and
down from,
Nichols.
yeah. Okay, thank you.
All right. See, no other. Oh, no. Not sure. All right, now we'll try it. All right, we're good. Seeing that we have no other appearances, I'll do the final call. All right, we will close the appearance section. And we have no unfinished business for tonight, and we can move on to 6A, which is new business. And this is for discussion and a possible action on the C3 route related traffic and or other safety concerns. And as Alder Wood pointed out in our acting mayor president, really it would be for this body if there were concerns related to public safety, either from what you heard through comment or other discussions as committee members. I won't call you on the spot, so we'll do much more of a popcorn version rather than just one by one. If you have any questions for other members, that's quite all right. If you have any clarifying points that you have questions for anybody that spoke tonight, if it's a clarifying question, we can ask that, but we really can't engage in a back and forth dialogue. And of course, at any time, city staff are available for any questions or comments or opinions based on their area of expertise. With that, I will open it up to the committee.
Oh, sorry if this is, oh, go ahead.
No, you go, you were, sorry, I'll let you go.
Right, so there's, sorry if this is remedial to a lot of people in the room, because I've been engaged in this throughout the process. What is the rationale for the C3 route that we have?
This group will not be able to provide the rationale. We can tell you that the C3 route had, in the packet was a variety of the pieces of information that was provided to council. With, and I know this doesn't help you right now.
Right.
Providing to a lot of the minutes and historical aspects, as Doug was pointing out, of about a year and a half, if not a little bit more than that, I think. Work on a variety of aspects, including revisions over time of a proposed route. And this was their final recommendation to council in late November, early December, somewhere in there. Which identified that particular route.
Okay.
Yeah,
And so we can't make recommendations regarding that.
we can make any recommendations that we have related to safety or safety related aspects that we would want the negotiation team to be aware of coming from this group. And I tried to provide some guidance for possible kind of way to help kind of shape your thinking in that supplementary materials. Which was trying to get some of that language of hang on, if we do have concerns for, we want them to do A, B, and C. How would you do that? And so we provided a very basic, I have the whole stack. The very basic kind of idea of recommending the following safety provisions to the negotiating team. I think I added language that if they feel like there is some additional direction that they might need based on that, then they could seek that out from different bodies. But this group purely focused on the safety items, and it might be something different to roads, infrastructures, education, engineering, alternatives.
What about timing? Can we recommend route does not take place during school starting and ending? Is that something we would have?
Well, that's related to one question I have, which is it's on a half-hour cycle, right? Do we know, and obviously it's gonna vary in practice day to day, but do we know what the estimates are for the times in which it's going on that part of the road?
No.
Okay.
That's
We
being.
know they test.
Yeah.
It's not accurate. I mean, we can't tell you that it's gonna be 8:21 versus 8:15 at this point, but we can tell you that it's gonna be twice an hour. That's a two-way route. Starting at 8 o'clock in the morning and going until 8 o'clock at night, 7:30 at night.
Yeah, we don't know the exact time. I'm sorry, I've got it clogged here, so I'm not sure if that's what was said. Yes, yeah.
Thank you. My question is for the chiefs in regards to safety and making your turns and doing everything that you need to do. Is that possible with the bus, with the size of the bus? If you're, what does that entail in regards to safety?
We don't drive large apparatus for us. We're able to navigate around lots of things, so I'll defer to the chief.
Yeah, we're any vehicles that meet standard DOT specification, we can operate around on the streets in the city. So we have no issue with whether it's a 40-foot bus or a 40-foot panel truck. Our drivers are trained to operate around that.
Thank you. Are there I'm sorry.
No, finish up.
Okay. Are there safety concerns from either of you? Is that fair to ask?
So I have, and I bring with me some experience in working as the traffic captain from the city of Madison. There are a couple things I think that are noteworthy for folks to consider, especially the whomever is negotiating with Metro. One of which is the idling of buses. In terms of, where buses stop, that's important. If drivers are taking breaks, for example, in those stopping, standing, or parking areas. I am not the traffic engineer, but what I can tell you is that in my experience, just leaving Monona, and there's a couple of areas in Madison that I take to and from home, having to sort of skillfully pass a bus on the double yellow line area, for example, may present a challenge. But I think that we can overcome that if there's parameters in which we articulate to Metro, hey, on this street, this block, this area, there's no stopping, standing, or parking other than temporarily picking up a passenger at a stop. So my concern would be, let's just please be aware of the idling that may exist, because bus drivers are human beings and they need water and food and these facilities. And so there have been opportunities and times in which Metro has either authorized or not stopped a bus in a roadway. So that's something. The other thing that I've expressed that's with staff is as it relates to the route and Femrite Drive, and making a turn from Femrite onto Monona Drive, that we have seen some challenges in regular traffic, non-bus traffic, making that turn from Femrite Drive onto northbound Monona Drive. And there's some sightline issues. I mean, it's a big hill, and where the buildings are, et cetera, creates some sightline issues for vehicles. Now, I have not been in a bus and navigated that. Obviously, the chief has been in higher up apparatus, so that might not be an issue. It might be better, I'm not sure, but we know for based on experience that there have been some sightline issues as relates to vehicular traffic making that turn. Thank you. Oh, I will say one more thing, just really briefly. To the point made earlier, and some other people have asked me about this too, hills and buses and navigating snowy weather. I mean, that's something that I think that the city just needs to be prepared for, and whether that means DPW or whomever needs to give special consideration for the bus route and provide extra plowing or salt or whatever for buses to navigate hills. I have sat many of hours in my young days as a patrol officer behind stuck buses. So I think it's important for us to just give that to some consideration when we address this route. Does DPW and are they going to have the capability, which I obviously believe they are, to give some extra attention to these roads and these routes, especially when there's hills.
Would that be, and would it be budgeted for that? Would they budget for that to make sure?
It's an answer that I cannot give you.
I'm just
We can
curious.
make it, for example, if you got to the point and it was making the recommendation that there's adequate preparation for whatever the route ends up being when it's finalized, that adequate preparation is in place for that. I mean, I think that clearly is something that can be included in the recommendations from this group.
Thank you.
I just had a question on the timing of all this. I mean, does it sound like Metro's coming to Monona, that decision's already been made? And all that's left is exactly what route, whether it's in the city or if we just say Monona Drive and Broad, but whoever the negotiating team, is that all that's left, and what's the timetable? Where are we at? Because we've just been presented with this here and in January, and it seems obviously a very important issue. So where are we with that?
I know you spoke a little bit to this in your comment. I'm pointing at you because in your active role.
How much time is left to actually have an impact? It seems like things are already in motion.
Yeah,
There are elements in motion, but all that.
Well, yeah, if you feel like you're thrown into the middle of an issue, it's because you were.
Yeah.
I mean, transit has worked on it for a year and a half plus, and
And in reading that what we got, I fully appreciate that. It sounds like they've done a lot of work. They just didn't sit down and whatever, so I give it credit for that. But for us, this is news to us.
So, to address part of your comment, the decision about whether, because Madison will operate and open the bus doors now on Monona Drive at Broadway. So the routes that currently run through that now they don't open the doors, they will, so that there will be service there. The C3 route is an internal route. So was one of the 4 things that the council, the parameters was adopting the C3 route, the hours of operation. They would operate on the 2 LNG lines or Monona Drive and Broadway.
And paratransit 7 days.
Paratransit 7 days a week.
And C3 is only 5 days a week. I'm
Right.
chair of the transit commission, so.
Yeah.
I think I need to bash it.
Huh?
Because I read that, and I was like, they did a lot of work.
Yeah, we have, yeah, so it's money, so in other words, on the weekends when the walkers and riders and families out or whatever are greater, or particularly like, for instance, on Winnequa Drive, on Winnequa Road, we made a decision not to have the transit run on weekends. Because they construct it.
Nancy, question for you. Did you guys talk about the start and end of the school day? Because it seems like a lot of the concerns here relate to kids going to school and walking to school. Has that been discussed? Is that been
Yes,
communicated to
but we
Metro?
also, but part of the reason why we are choosing to expand transit is because there's just honestly, there's no way that we can be a city that's committed to DEI or diversity, equity, inclusion or belonging, or a city that's committed to sustainability. We have a bus that runs 2 times. No, that only serves, as people said, 10 people in the morning and 10 people in the afternoon. So if you only work at 8 to 5, you know, and only runs a mile outside of Monona. So except for the exact route downtown. So we felt like we needed increased service to serve our community.
Is there demand for it?
There is a demand for it.
Hang on.
I'm saying.
Don't seem like, it's important that we
Hang on.
don't get off
We're
track
not
on
revisiting the
decision.
choice.
You don't have to look at me, I didn't say anything.
No, I know, I'm just saying, we're not revisiting the
Hang on,
choice, I'm
hang
just
on.
trying to explain.
The appearance section's been closed. Hang on,
Right,
Nancy,
I'm just
we're-
trying to explain as the chair of the transit.
Well, I just want to remind the
commission.
task of the Public Service Committee, right?
Right,
That
this
the
is
committee
not.
shall review and recommend ordinances and policies related to the organization and operation of the police and fire departments and the emergency medical service units, right? So I just wanted to remind.
And to make recommendations around public
Correct.
safety.
Yes.
Yep, that's all I was focused
Exactly.
on of like,
And I just
there are
wanted,
other items that are water under the bridge, although they're like questions that feel like it helps answer those items, but we can't go too far down that path.
right, and I was just trying to actually respond to Joe's initial question, which is how do we come to the C3? And we came to the C3 because the commission saw great value in people being able to get to the city center, being able to get to the pool. If you're a teenager and you want to go to the pool, if you're a teenager and you want to go to the library, or if you're a senior and you want to go to the library. We've had, you know, for many years, we've had seniors say, can't we get, you know, down to the senior center more often? So we see, and already with the current bus routes, the riders are interior to Monona. Public national research shows that if you don't have a bus stop within a quarter of a mile of your home, you don't use it. Doesn't mean you can't walk more than a quarter of a mile. I can walk more than a mile, but I'm just not gonna take it, you know, and I'm just not gonna take a bus. I'm not gonna avail myself of the bus if I have to walk a mile to get to a stop. And so that's exactly why we have an interior route now. And that's exactly why we feel like we need an interior route moving forward. I hope that better explains it.
That helps, and I know we have to focus on safety, but
Yeah.
trying to do what I can to put a little broader context to it.
Yeah.
Is there documentation on the people that have requested, and I know I'm probably
Yeah, we'll have to
okay.
save that for
because I cannot-
another
It's
time.
all on the, it's all on the website. On the
I
website.
looked, I cannot find any documentation on how many people wanted in the center.
We'll have to save that for a different
I just
conversation.
feel like she's informing her community something.
The committee was provided
Okay.
all of the minute notes and all of the items that were presented at council as well. And so if there's any concern, and this is listed for possible action if the group feels like they don't have enough information to do anything tonight, this group doesn't need to do anything.
I think it kind of gets back to where I started with my question then is what is when are these final decisions gonna be made yet if we, table it for the next month or the next month and do we miss our chance, or is this gonna something that's gonna happen in the summer or in the fall or?
Great question. So when it was approved at council, that has moved on, and that would be for they were charged with beginning those negotiations. There wasn't an exact timeline of when that was coming back. But the idea was that they're working on it now. Everybody knows that even if that came back next week, it's not coming back next week. That doesn't mean anything's starting right away. So there is additional time. We don't know the exact time frame, but the ball is in motion because council approved moving forward with those negotiations.
So after the negotiations take place, will there be another opportunity for? Well, I'm assuming there'll be a presentation if anything changes or put on the website, and then will people have opportunity to respond to that, or it's
I don't
already
believe
too?
so, but Nancy, I'm
No,
not sure if you
no,
have any
we're
further.
negotiating as a contract.
Okay,
And I would, with Metro and what I would, and as was explained prior to the vote of the city council. There was a small portion of the road which very much relates to Femrite and the bottom part of the southern part of the road. That we're still working with Metro on. But otherwise, the rest of the route is pretty well set but as with any contract, I would expect both for Metro reasons and for the city of Monona. There would be a clause in there that would say, that would not etch any of the routes in stone, which isn't to say that we would be revisiting them at city council. It would just mean that if the routes weren't working out for either party, it wouldn't stop the contract. I mean, Metro, as you probably know, is adjusting the current service, their new service, like every quarter. They're making new adjustments based on what they're seeing in ridership and what's working, what's not working, where the demand is. And so, and I would expect that we would want to do the same. So I'm not envisioning that they would, as I said, that they would etch a particular route in stone, in the contract and say, that for either one of us, that there would probably be a clause in there that allows either one of us to make adjustments based on what we're seeing in the ridership. That would be as we would do with any other contract.
thank you.
Okay. So, and Neil, the administrator, may be able to answer this better, but I think even once the contract is negotiated, there will be a period of probably 6 months before it's implemented, that some changes, not the route at that point, I wouldn't think, but some, if there are specific improvements, that those could happen or could be planned for. I guess my suggestion would be if there are things that the committee knows tonight that they definitely want to recommend, to do those tonight. And if there's more stuff that because you guys it's a lot of information. You could put it off to another meeting, but the negotiation process isn't going to stop in the meantime. So, yeah, that's it.
Just wanna add one thing. Maybe more. But I think currently we're looking at a 5-day service, but there was a lot of discussion about adding something on the weekends so that the entire city can be eligible for the paratransit service. So even though initially we're looking at a 5-day service, we're also talking about some level of service on the weekends.
No, we're not.
Well, last I heard.
What was approved at council didn't include anything beyond the 5 days a week. For the C3 route and 7-day paratransit. 3/4 of a mile from any bus that's running at that time. So because the G and L still run on Monona Drive and Broadway, residents would still have access paratransit if they're eligible for paratransit for that same buffer zone. Because those buses are still running on those street, and then if we had a contract with Metro, they would be opening the doors on those street. And not only do they open the doors, then you have the 3/4 ADA accessible paratransit buffer. There would be some areas in the city that would be further than that 3/4 mile, and so they wouldn't have access at their door for the paratransit, but if they were eligible, they would just need to get to an area of coverage for eligibility. So, which is not unusual.
Right, Madison has all kinds of donut hole, what they refer to as donut holes. It's a federal tax that you have to be within 3/4 of a mile to stop, which is another reason why I have a C3, because if I didn't have C3. None of the people, a lot of the people in Monona would not qualify for paratransit by virtue of how far away their house is. And Rick, just to be clear, I'm saying we haven't gotten to the point at the Transit Commission or at the council to say that we're gonna be adding service, so I just don't wanna, I'm interested in managing people's expectations. We're definitely aware of the donut hole and the need to address that, but I don't think we're there yet.
Great, thank you.
Yeah.
I have a question, Larry Reed.
Larry, thanks for chiming in, because I had my back to the
That's all
camera.
right. Is there any projection of what ridership is gonna be like? Cause Monona used to have bus service. And a prior mayor ended it. And my understanding was it had pretty heavy use. So is there any kind of projection on what ridership is gonna be for this, under this new contract?
Larry, I know that's a desired question, but it's a question outside of the purview and scope of this committee, unfortunately. I think that's a question regarding kind of, are we moving in that direction? That part has been decided, but my guess is you also have potentially other questions related specifically to when this is implemented, are there safety concerns that you have related to the contract or the Route C3?
Okay.
Sorry.
That's all right.
I'm trying to keep us in the narrow focus that we have to be in.
Okay.
Awesome, thank you, Larry. Connie or Jim? Awesome, not seeing anything.
I have a question. Will the school, since the school has a recommended route, will they be involved in these negotiations? Since they're advising families on how to get the kids to school, to and from school?
I will ask Nancy if the school has been involved in safe routes to school as it relates to the planning and all of the work that has gone in so far. They've been
The
consulted
school
yet.
has not been involved yet, but just as the Public Works Committee, oh, sorry, not the committee. Just as the Director of Public Works was, we had a discussion with the Director of Public Works. And I've had a discussion with the Chief of Police and his safety concerns. My intention certainly would be to reach out to the schools as well. What we have done as a community, or what we have done in our budget, is, and we've said it often in transit, you'll hear it if you watch the transit meetings, is that we owe it to the community to be an all hands on deck, every media channel we have, to make sure that everybody in the community knows from a communication standpoint, and that includes everyone certainly that is involved in schools as well. Knows when it's gonna be implemented, how it's gonna be implemented, where the stops are gonna be. I mean, we're probably not looking. I would be surprised if we saw buses before the beginning of 25.
It helps. I think I'd want that to be part of a recommendation, a possible recommendation.
So, sure.
Are you the one who wrote this?
I did. Those were intended to be helping with a jumping off point for this group of like, how on earth do we actually put a recommendation together and what might be, how might we structure what some of those recommendations might be? So it might include those, it might not include those, it might include others. And I like to give people a starting point. Well, especially serving as a committee member, like I know sometimes it's like, I want to roll something, but I don't even know what to say at this point. Rick and then Joe.
Since safety seems to be the major concern, and this is a committee dedicated to that. What we can do to study the route for what its safety concerns might be and have a qualified engineer or consultant who could really task that might be a really good starting point. Just so people have a document from a professional that says, these are the safety issues. Here's the best recommendations for addressing them. Be it bike lanes, be it sidewalks, be it crossing lanes, be it streetlights. It'd be nice to put that into a document.
I'll answer that with a comment that doesn't directly answer that, but I think will be a little bit muddy. Historically, this is one of the balancing acts between public safety and our charge as a group and public works and their charge as a group. And so, for example, of why this agenda item was marked for traffic and other safety considerations was within the realm of this group. However, when it comes to infrastructure design, we might have comments related to additional lighting along this pathway. Where it fits into the engineering and the design is not within the scope of this group. That's within the scope of Public Works as a department, as well as their advisory committee if needed. Which can be cumbersome over the years. I will tell you that, for example, our former police chief, Al Payton, had plenty of recommendations of what he wanted in certain areas as it related to traffic calming devices. And another group did not see those needs and the same way from an engineering and street design and meeting those standards. They were different. So the idea of studying the route to look at what should go where, that's really a mixture of somewhere else. Although once it gets to that point, and Nancy, please chime in if I have this incorrect. Once it gets to the point and there is further along on the negotiation stage, there will be some time at some point, which is saying, is the stop here or is the stop there? And are there other elements related to where a stop might be, for example, and other things that might be needed? The mention of the appropriate pad to get on and off a bus, for example. I'm just taking a low hanging fruit here, right? So if there's a stop and we need a pad, like that might be small infrastructure that's needed. We don't know that right now. At some point that will be known, and there will be some conversations regarding those kind of elements. I'll pause it. You have one?
Yeah, I just wanted to add to that. So this committee, since I've been here, I'm sure before me, has been involved in discussions about sort of enforcement side of the house and what things the police department is seeing, what we're doing. So I'm happy to answer any questions related to that as we go through this process. You know, I think you've heard me talk about traffic in and around the high school before and, you know, what the police department is continuing to work on, some of the parking issues that the police department has to respond to. But as the alder was saying, some of those issues such as signage and such is the purview of the Public Works Committee. So this group, I think I've been here since this group, since I've staffed this group, has made recommendations to that committee. But we can't necessarily direct, well, we can't direct anything. The council has the sole authority to do that, in most cases. But we can make, this body can make certain recommendations based on sort of the safety elements, fire, police aspect of whatever you're considering. Is that clear as mud?
No, I get it. I think maybe that's what you envisioned, number 3. Okay, making a recommendation to the committee that actually has authority to make a more formal recommendation.
Or it's to that negotiation team, if we have certain items that we suggest based on the knowledge of the strength and area of expertise, to let them know that as they're in that negotiation phase. I felt like it was better to do that sooner than later, if there was going to be any contributions from this group. Which I believed was important.
We may want a little bit of time
Yeah.
to come up with that. I mean, this is a lot of information coming at us and we're spending a lot of time kind of figuring out what we can and can't offer opinions on. So maybe we table any formal recommendations to the next meeting. So thought I had. So I don't know if we're going to be in a position to do that tonight.
And to avoid a stoppage here quickly, if someone does motion to table and there's a second, we're done. And like we can't talk anymore, and then someone's gotta like raise it, so I would encourage us just not to take any action. So that way it can come back as an old business item. I'll take it as like the common knowledge, table it.
Brian?
Yeah.
Sorry, Chris, I totally appreciate what you're saying. It's a ton of information you can imagine. Those are on the Grants Commission, among other things, and I, you know, as Doug said, I've seen everybody here before too, and I'm very appreciative of the fact that this is a tough issue. It's not an easy issue. I guess I'm wondering if, rather than have you any get up to speed on all of this, to feel like you're in a position to make a motion. You know, I just wonder if a potential motion would be that that, you know, the staff and the negotiating team can continue to listen to the chief of police and the director of public works to ensure that the route and the contract is developed in a manner that, I mean, what we would normally do, just to put on another hat, what we would normally do, like, for instance, with a development. Okay, if we're planning a development and I can put my planning hat on as chair of the plan commission, is that when we get to a close to what's typically referred to as the precise implementation plan, which is essentially where we're at with transit right now. The staff person that chairs the plan commission reaches out to all of the relevant other departments, from public works to public safety to the fire department to wherever, to say, do you have anything to say about this development? Is there anything that you know, and sometimes they do because there's a utility that's running underground, or sometimes they do because they're worried about
Line of
curb
sight
cuts
issues.
or lighting or curb cuts or you know, what when we get to PIP phase, you're also looking at what they're doing in terms of, you know, their fire apparatus and where they're, and making sure the fire trucks can get in, et cetera. So everybody weighs in on, you know, on paper to let those committees know. So the committees don't, you know, it doesn't, the whole development doesn't come in front of the Public Safety Committee or in front of the Public Works Committee. It's the staff. So one possibility for this group would be, rather than trying to get up to speed on this whole thing, would be to say that, you know, to authorize us to continue to work with the negotiating team, staff team, to continue to work with the department heads. And just throw that out there.
Unfortunately, this is the part we can't go back and forth.
I have a question, Connie up here. Do we, I'm up here, do we have, would it be possible for us to have an input, or is it appropriate for us to have input into, or at least something presented to us before it happens, on where stops are and the possibility of, you know, I'm concerned about the elderly and the disabled in our community and everyone else, for how people get on and off at those stops. And that kind of thing is considered. I don't know if we're the appropriate people, but I think safety wise, that's going to be important for kids, you know, the elderly, disabled. Stepping off of curbs is really tough, if there are any. But, you know, whether there are pads, whether there's something, is that appropriate or not?
The design of infrastructure would be out of our purview.
Okay.
And one of the pieces that I think Nancy's pointing to is like, as those items are developed, they would be working with the department heads as they're making some of those decisions, as well as the expertise that's within Metro as well regarding those infrastructure design elements.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yep, good point, Phil. Okay.
Question over here, and it builds on some of what Angela was asking early in the discussion. You know, we do obviously have experience with the Nelson buses running through. You know, that's most heavy around the school, but the middle school buses are running, you know, past 4 o'clock through other areas, through Pheasant Hill, all that sort of stuff. Do we have have we taken historically any steps to address any safety concerns already related to the Nelson buses running in those areas, the amount of space available, you know, stops, anything like that? Or are there any active concerns we have about those right now?
When I take sort of those inquiries, what I typically do is I ask my crew, I look at the data to see if there's any crashes. And in that case, you know, there haven't been anything that stood out to me as far as a bus versus parked car, for example. But then I go to what I consider our experts, which is our public works and our traffic and our contracted traffic engineers, and say, here's the concern. We're not seeing it on our end, but just making you aware of the concern. So obviously, based on some of the conversations in this room, I've obviously heard some outside of this room about those concerns. I don't have the data to back that up, but it isn't to mean that I don't have a data on a lot of things that we see every day, and we've talked about that in this group. Therein lies the question, and I think what Alder Moore, I think, is alluding to is let's perhaps staff sort of hash that out, and the public works director and the PD kind of get together, and fire gets involved, and we all sort of figure out what we got, and then make any other recommendations to this action work group that's soon to be commissioned here. And I don't want to speak for you, Alder, I think that's what you're saying. So in terms of the bus specifically, I mean, every day I'm concerned about everything related to traffic in a town, a wonderful town I love with no sidewalks, right? These youngsters out there, my gosh, please, even the adults don't stop for signs. We all know that. The adults on bikes don't stop for stop signs. So, you know, it's just a really complex issue, Joe, and I, as you know, I'm not shy to opine. So I will weigh in when and as much as I can to make sure people in this community are safe.
So far I've heard one option is we don't take any action tonight. We move on and we consider potential action at the next meeting, which doesn't mean it would be potential action because we might decide no action at that meeting. Or I've also heard a recommendation or encouragement for us to possibly consider a recommendation that the staff from the committee continue to work with the city's negotiating team on behalf of Public Safety Committee as they're moving forward with the negotiations. School, right? And yeah, and probably a third option, which kind of pairs with the first option, which is I need time to digest. And there might be actually a few items, one or more item that you may want to include in a recommendation to that negotiating team as they're moving forward, but you're not committed to know what those are right at this moment. And
Brian, sorry, I'm maybe speaking out of turn here, but it did seem to me that what Angela was saying was that, I mean, as the school district is a separate body and is not a department head of the city of Monona, then certainly there could be, what you were suggesting, Angela, which I fully appreciate, is that just as we continue to work with department heads, we could certainly reach out to the school district as well. And the appropriate people at the school district.
It's a courtesy at the least.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly.
to do
You know, of course, like I said, we were planning on it. I mean, as several people in this room know, because they've been here before, when we presented the proposal to the city council, I referred to my framework as being in the general development proposal and a PIP. And, getting approval of Metro was like the general development proposal, which is to say that exactly where the stops are and all those details are still being worked out. And my intention, as we would do in the development case, was to reach out to the department heads, as I've done, and and to reach out to the school. Which I can certainly do, and I'm gonna be doing anyway, whether there's a motion or not. So,
we can't add any more public comment after the appearance section.
I'm trying to put myself in the shoes of the people that came here and spoke today, and not that nobody else does. I'm just trying to think here. If I would have shown up, is it inappropriate for, let's just say, as a body, we decided, hey, because it's clearly what they're saying is C3 is out. They don't want C3. Even if we made that motion, would that even have any effect on it, coming from our committee at least? Because I'm thinking if I was sitting over there, that's what I would want to hear.
Wholeheartedly probably wouldn't be worth the ink on the paper.
Okay.
I mean, in the sense of council has already motion to move forward in that direction. As Nancy talked about, there are items that are still getting worked out. And there are possibilities that this group might contribute either from department heads working with that negotiating team or identified specifically from this group that might be taken under consideration. It doesn't mean that they would necessarily do that thing.
Because I guess I'm trying to narrow this all down, which is, a lot of stuff here. Is what, because I think we're all together on wanting our streets safe. I mean, I think it's safe to say that. So
as is your city council and your transit commission, just to be clear, I just want to, I
wasn't excluding you.
I know, I'm just saying.
I'm trying to.
I'm just saying, because we've been at this for,
So my question is, what kind of motion can we make today if it's a value, or if we wait, if it's a value in February or whatever? I guess that would be my important thing. What can we do as the public safety committee to make sure that those people who ultimately will be making those decisions, that they know that public safety of these routes, whether it's C3 or whether it's just Monona Drive or the corridors or whatever, that we're really concerned about the public safety of this entire endeavor. Because that's kind of where, as I'm sitting here now, given what all we can do as our committee. That would be attractive to me anyway, as far, but I have no idea how to word that.
Yeah, it would either likely be limited much more to continue to work with the chiefs on that ongoing negotiation. Or if there were specific items that you were wanting to make sure that are considered.
Would that be, for instance, on your sheet, because right when I looked at that map today, I thought Owen Drive and that front and them right, that T intersection there. Winnequa walking down there, I mean, I'm a walker too and stuff like that. It's dark, it's narrow and stuff like that. I mean, I thought of all those, but if you just kind of condense that into that this committee has safety concerns over whatever those who ultimately make the decision. I guess I'm kind of trending to what I don't know how to say that.
I mean, I spent a lot, I forgot to add in, I did write down some summaries based on what I've heard from the various presentations, as well as just like my own thoughts from what I've heard. And the concerns that I identified, getting kind of to your point, was one was the turn onto and from Monroe Drive and Femright. And Aldermore talked about the one and the chief did as well coming up Femright. My concern was both onto and from. And one of the reasons I had a concern was it's not a controlled intersection and the sight lines. The second was the turn onto and from Owen onto Monroe Drive, specifically because of the narrow lane entry on Owen with the median. The high level of congestion at Monona and Owen, often leading to stacked traffic blocking access points. So as you're exiting on Owen, oftentimes access points for the various curb cuts are blocked. Multiple access points are very close to Monroe Drive, and it can cause vehicles to stop and cause stacking actually into traffic as well. The third item I had was around Pheasant Hill, had to do with the lack of sidewalks, multi-users in the roadway. Parked on two sides. Much of this is already been, some of this is a summary from what I've heard. Multiple users in the roadway, and then the Winnequa stretch between Nichols and Dean, which it's been mentioned, lack of sidewalks, multi-users in the roadway, parking on one side, pet, bike, and car, and then what we've heard tonight about near school. But they're all items that I think have continued to be part of the conversation all along. Those were the items that I still felt had some safety concerns to them that I think warrant either ongoing conversations from the chief with that negotiating team or specific recommendations, which I listed two possibilities, but this is a committee that I see as my role as a facilitator and not necessarily the person to drive it. So
No pun intended.
yeah. No pun, yeah.
I mean, just hearing all those issues that you just raised. It seems to me that's a lot to ask, and that's probably just scratching the surface. I mean, I think there are probably lots of intersections and road cuts along Owen and other issues. It would be a lot to ask of staff to do that level of analysis on all those various pieces and parts. So I do feel like a consultant, other than just staff, makes a lot of sense. And if we could just put that into a recommendation to Public Works, the committee, that would be, I think, something to consider.
One important thing to note as well is, given the size of Metro, they do have levels of expertise within Metro when they're looking at proposed routes, right? Like it's not a foreign concept. You know, they just redid this whole thing and they continue to make adjustments. So there is a level of expertise, I think, getting to your point of like, if we're gonna go down road A versus road B, they have the ability to make some of those analyses to assist in that. And I think that's what's been conversation about, like, that's the ongoing negotiation, an area of expertise that that group is also bringing to the table.
I guess I just want to see some level of documentation so that other people, the public, people here can kind of see what that safety analysis, what the conclusions are and how they got there.
In multiple conversations with management at Madison Metro, they are adamant about not putting buses on roads they deem are unsafe.
Well, yeah.
Sure, that's funny, but
And Rick, I would also say that, again, I've had conversations with our Director of Public Works, who everyone in this room knows is Herb. Or if you don't know him, you should know that our Public Works Department is Herb. You just look at this last snowstorm, or any other thing that Public Works, in comparison to Madison, they're superb. And he does not have a problem with it. He knows about Rome, and so the whole thing about Owen being an issue and the turns and all that, that's Brian. Sorry, but that's you. And listening to a handful of people, that's not a professional. Dan's, you know.
I'm just not a road professional, I'm a professional.
Yeah, yeah. So I, you know, and I don't think it's up to this committee to make a recommendation to another committee.
I thought we said we could.
Yeah.
I've heard the chief say it.
Because it's been done, I'm not.
Oh,
Right.
I'm making a recommendation to Public Works.
Yeah, they've made recommendations on Public Works to review sort of parking and signage and.
Okay,
et cetera.
all right, sorry, I take it back.
There have been a few
I
items that have been
decided-
tossed
Not
back
that
and
Public Works
forth.
has done anything with
Yeah, yeah.
some of these.
There have been some items that have been back and forth, but
I'm getting vibes from Angela that we feel the same, that it's an exercise in frustration to have this referred to this committee. And then being told, you can't do that, you can't do that, you can't do that.
we can make recommendations to the negotiating team if there are items that you feel strongly to have them consider. And it could be to hire an external consultant. They might choose not to do that.
It's interesting that we can refer it to a public safety committee, but not a public works. Committee. It seems somewhat like inconsistent, to say the least.
We have referred things to Public Works in the past. I would encourage this body not to refer it to another committee. It's been clear that council has voted on the 4 items to move forward with the contract, the hour, like those items are in motion and that has proceeded. The intention here was to identify if there were identified particular safety concerns that you want the negotiating team to include and be aware of as they're going through that negotiation. In addition to what they will already be doing with the chiefs and other department heads, it's an opportunity for this group to put that forward to say, hey, we want to make sure that you pay attention to A, B, and C as you're doing it.
Well, as I read this suggestion, it does mention external consultants. So are we saying that's not appropriate then?
No, if you read that whole, not a recommendation, it was a.
Engage external consultant.
Yeah, I don't know where that one from. I can read it because none of them has this, or the top, yeah, so one of the potential starting point templates was engage appropriate internal and internal consultants or department heads and external consultants to develop a plan with specific strategies, including immediate or quick to implement strategies to address high multi-user demand specific to the stretch of Winnicott between Nichols and Dean. So for example, that was one of the ideas or suggestions I had based on the list of information I had. And these were all in the larger motion of providing or provide the following safety recommendations to the city's Metro Transit negotiating team regarding the implementation of Metro services. The city's negotiating team to refer as appropriate to the Transit Commission or Council if the negotiating team requests any additional approval or direction. And then it was the 3 items that I have from my list.
What's the downside of referring it to Public Works?
What are the different possibilities? One is, the chair decides not to put it on the agenda. The second could be, it could go there and be tabled indefinitely. Another option is it could go there and they make no recommendation and move on. Or they make a recommendation and does something. Those are kind of like 4 outcomes. Doug, you're the longest serving person in the room. Did I miss any other outcomes that could happen?
No, I don't think so. I mean, I think probably making recommendations to the negotiating team, whether you do that tonight or take another month to think about those recommendations. That would be the best way to go. But, you know, I think they would likely have more success the more closely they adhere to the things that have already been approved route. And saying, but here are some things on that route that we think are deficiencies. Or that we think, maybe we don't know, we want, want this issue to be looked at further.
Right, and if I could, perfect example, and this is where we work with staff, right? This is what we do, is your elected officials, we work with the staff that we have, who are all really good, including the 2 chiefs sitting here tonight. And so, as a perfect example, prior to this meeting, Chief Cheney said one of the areas that he was concerned about was the Femrite turn, that's on this list that Brian created. He says he doesn't drive things, but he's the one that created the list. And so, Brian said he was concerned about that. Of course, we're gonna look at that. The reason why we're going down Femrite is because there's a definite need. We have riders on Femrite. We have businesses on Femrite that have requested really strongly, they need bus service down Femrite. Does that mean we have to go both ways on Femrite? No, and which is why that end of the route, when it was approved by the city council, was the one piece that we discussed at the time that it was approved that wasn't finalized yet, because we're still working with Metro to get that right. And now that we've talked to public safety and he said, and he has said, I'm concerned about that piece. We're gonna be, I'm sure the negotiating team will take that into consideration and we'll continue to push Metro to see what we can do so that that particular corner is solved, in a way that, as best we can. I'm probably too often say, I don't think it's too often. Some of you have probably heard there's a phrase, we can't let the perfect be the enemy of the good. Like there's no route in Monona. There's absolutely no route in Monona. There's absolutely no number of sidewalks in Monona. There's absolutely no number of buses or lack of buses in Monona, whatever, that's gonna be perfect. It just isn't. And so the question for for us as a community obviously became recognizing that we can't have perfect. What's going to better serve the city of Monona, all of the residents of the city of Monona. And obviously that's where the city council came down. So we will continue to work with our department heads, including Public Works. And absolutely, you're welcome to make a motion around the school districts, although I guarantee you I'll be reaching out to them, we'll be reaching out to them. But if you want to make a motion in that direction, into that, I welcome it. No problem with that. I have no problem with any motion. That's good. So, but I'm certainly gonna listen to our safety personnel. Because that's what we do.
That's what you pay me for.
That's why we pay the big bucks. That's
Or
why-
no motion.
Right.
Thank
It-
you
it-
for,
I was just gonna say, it just doesn't seem to me that
there's
even
no-
the things we've covered, well, it's already being done here, it's already being done there, it's already, so our motion seems to be.
point, almost, why? But thank
You
you
know?
for all the hard work that
Sure.
your committee has put in.
Sure.
Totally understand the equity issue involved here. I'm looking at all the folks here that are still here, and it's almost 8 o'clock. So there seems to be a lot of concern, and keep looking at the sign, and you've been standing the whole time, but bless your heart. We're past the say no, keep our streets safe part, right? Right? I don't know, what is it?
I'm with you, I don't know what.
I don't know
Well,
what.
it's either, I think we just say proceed, or if you want specific recommendations, which you're asking for, I don't think we can give you specific recommendations now on the spot. Which is why I initially said,
Yeah.
let's kick it till next month. Or we're just here to
Here.
kind of say, great job, guys. Without any really input. So I
I
think
agree,
that's the
it's
question.
difficult to do something at the table today. It's an open question to me whether we feel like we're gonna have more in a month.
Correct, I agree.
Right.
Or more impact. I mean,
We have no impact.
it seems like our motion will go nowhere, because it's already being done. Which is, unfortunate, I guess, but I know that's,
It is.
we just make recommendations, we don't have the authority of the city council, which I appreciate and stuff, but I just don't like making a motion to make a motion, seems.
Or there may be additional items that you believe that needs to go forward that might not come through city staff.
But they're
As
the
a-
experts.
As they're looking at those other pieces, well, I would say that you're each here for a reason, and you bring different backgrounds and expertise. In addition to these two fine individuals, but there was also other expertise on this committee that may
I
have
think
something
we've had
to
a
add, maybe
lengthy
not.
conversation that hasn't surfaced those yet, though.
I'm sensing no action tonight.
I guess I'd like to say that these people here came for a very significant reason. And I think the best way to respond is with information about what is or aren't the safety issues that they're raising. If we, as the Public Safety Commission, don't have authority to respond to those, then somehow we have to get some kind of response from someone who can. And be it an external or internal consultant, something formally should be done. And I think something more than just we're handling it. We know what we're doing. People interrupted their lives to come here. They have some very legitimate, maybe not legitimate, but some real fears. And to not do anything, I think would be inappropriate. So whether we do it this month or next, I think some kind of formal response in writing so that everyone's fears can be allayed, hopefully, or some action taken to resolve those issues. Something has to be done, and not doing anything just seems a mistake.
Do you have a recommendation?
Well, every time we make a recommendation, it doesn't seem we have the authority to do it. But
If there are specific items that you believe should be sent to the negotiating team from this group that is particularly addressing any safety concerns, we can make that either today or next meeting or never.
it's not so much the individual safety concerns as how they are responded to. I've heard lots of issues with sidewalks, street lamps, speed bumps, crossing lanes, push button, safety lights. Those are a panoply of things that might come to bear in dealing with these safety issues. And the city, in whatever form, has to take those into an honest account and respond. So my only suggestion is to have an external consultant document those issues, those concerns, and put them into something people can learn from. So other than that, I know I don't have a specific recommendation, but I hope we have it on the agenda for next month and we can maybe deal with that a little bit more.
It sounds like it's almost like flushing out what I had as that third item, which was really specific to Winnequa.
Yeah.
The stretch. If there were other elements that were like very targeted like that, it might be that the negotiating team is really looking at addressing at these three items in this location as they're doing those next stages.
Someone should catalog those and let people know that they're being considered and honestly responded to. Fully responded to.
Not seeing any action tonight. I'll give it another moment if any other members have any questions, concerns.
Can I interrupt to say thank you?
Thank you. Thanks.
Brian, is there, if the recommendation coming out of this committee is to make a recommendation to Public Works to consider a consultant to do the larger total thing, it doesn't have to wait until next month. I mean, I'm just saying, Rick, you could make a motion. You don't have to wait until next month. I mean, if you're saying the motion is that you want Public Works to entertain a larger analysis around whatever safety things might be considered for this route. You can make that motion now. I don't know. Whether or not you have support in your group, I don't know, but you could. You don't have to wait another.
I think I'd like to think about it a little bit more and maybe ask some more questions.
Okay.
So that I have a better idea of what could actually.
I agree. I don't
actually happen.
I don't want to feel rushed.
Okay.
I feel like we're being rushed.
I do too.
Yeah, I don't want to be rushed and I would like to drive the route myself. I mean, I know the streets, but I look at the route. And I just want to put my eyes on it. Think about what the folks said here tonight before we, as a committee, make some kind of recommendation.
Thank you, Larry.
You're welcome.
All right. We will close item 6A and move on to item 7, which is updates, discussion on diversity, equity, inclusion initiatives and efforts. Anything from George?
Not going to do that. It's diversity and all that, so I'm not going.
Don't feel like you need to stay. You can leave, or you're welcome to stay.
So I'll just add, so we completely overhauled our internship program. We've done a great load more of recruiting and specifically recruiting. So we don't have any current vacancies for warrant officer positions, but we've established a recruitment team for both future sworn positions and non-sworn positions, so dispatch, but also interns. And we have designed a formal internship program. I'll give credit to my officers, and one in particular who brought this idea as a former intern himself. Thank you. We've taken many road trips, including one to my alma mater, our alma mater, Bill Redbirds, Mark. It's a long way down, but just highly impressed with your officers and watching them in action, talking about and bragging about this community, number one, and this police department, number two. And watching people who have never heard of the city of Monona react to that and listening to the stories. And so I think in terms of where we're going, the outreach that we're doing, reaching out to Black student unions, for example, and trying to do as much as we can to continue to work on creating a more diverse workplace. That's what we've been doing. So we do have a new intern. It came down to two. The one candidate, although I'd love to have this individual, was really early on in their collegiate career. And I'm going to encourage her to come back because I think that she would learn a great deal. So this year we selected a UW-Madison student athlete who is finishing up their last semester at UW-Madison and has aspirations not from the Dane County area, pretty much like myself, from the Chicago area. And I'm saying, hey, it's great up here, isn't it? So I'm trying to, we'll work on convincing this candidate or this intern to, although we don't have a vacancy, to be a police officer here in Dane County. And so they will be with, he will be with us for the next 3 months. And so hopefully we'll get to meet him. So.
What sport?
Wrestling.
We can jump to reports as a collective whole. Reports, Jerry. You go next.
I can tell you we brought on 4 more volunteers that are just getting started. All of them, I think, are going to be excellent. We've actually had another 13 applications for volunteers, which is great. We're still getting a lot of applications. I apologize, I'm a little distracted. We've been dealing with some significant technology issues, so that's why update wise, it's my head's been buried in our reporting software. Even I was on vacation over Christmas and New Year's, and I was working on the boat because of technology issues. So we still have not quite ironed those out. So yeah, that's pretty much it.
Work continues with our contracted architect, Bray Architects, for the public safety building. The chief and I, along with several others, are part of a internal committee that's looking, that is working on sort of the engineering and the design aspects of it. I had it's probably like a 2.5 hour meeting with the architect. Had them in last week at this point. Last week.
Yeah, because we had ours yesterday.
Okay, yeah, last week, and it was very productive in terms of the needs of the police department and me just having a real heart-to-heart realistic sort of expectation as to what that space means for the police department and being able to do our job in the 21st century, right? So in terms of having, spaces to process drunk drivers, and I think all of you have been back there, right? And so we just really had a heart-to-heart about what spaces are needed practically for the police department, and they're really doing a lot of paring down from the original very open-ended question from that our original site feasibility architect FGM conducted, and so we're sort of shrinking that down a little bit to hopefully present an option for council to look at and a figure that is more sustainable, put it that way.
Or palatable.
Palatable, yeah, and sustainable,
Yeah.
and sustainable.
We should have said this when everybody was here, so.
Yeah, well,
Understand.
I know.
What's coming down the pipe.
So I joined 7 other Dane County chiefs in representing the Wisconsin Chiefs of Police Association for some current bills and legislation that are currently active and being considered. So I think it's important for you to know what your chief was doing at the Capitol for a full day last week. And there are 4 things that we're really focusing on, and we've met with about 6 or 7 different members of the legislature, both in the Senate and the House. and the first thing is increase in officer training reimbursement. So the state gives $160 per officer per year to conduct training. Your total budget that you give to the police department, and this will be the only whining point, well, one of the few whining points you'll hear from me, is that for 21 officers, there's $8,800 for us to train your staff with. And when you think in terms of the 24-hour requirement that is needed to retain certification for a single police officer, $8,800 doesn't go a long way. Taking from that $8,800 is also anytime we have a new officer or a candidate pool, we have to do psychological evals, we have to equip them in uniforms if they get hired. That also tracks from the $8,800 too. So the mayor knows this, so there's a secret. I've talked to many of you and the elected officials in this room about the need to increase our training budget. It comes up, I bring it up the 2 budget cycles I've been here, and you all have heard it too, obviously. So our nearest neighbor, I think, McFarland and Cottage Grove, they're in the 20,000s and they have fewer officers than we do. And I know our budget situation is significantly different than the new construction that those agencies have benefited from. However, I think in terms of needing to make sure as costs go up and there's this been very important push to do more training regarding DEI, which is free. We really need to think about adding to that line item. And so part of that will inform hopefully the referendum that the council has will be deciding on what that question looks like and what money that will be coming, or that budget increase request will be coming from council. But I've been sharing that and more with obviously the mayor, city administrator, and others as to some of our needs within the police department. So that line item is one of a couple of needs. You've heard me talk about the traffic officer before, and needing another supervisor, and the chief has mentioned some of his needs as well. So the $160 doesn't go very far that the state gives us. We're asking for 320. And every member of the legislature that I talk to seems very favorable. We all know how that goes. There's a lot of things that happen within the legislature, and there's a lot of give and takes too. So but that seemed very favorable. Establish a regional crisis facility for Chapter 51 cases, so mental health facility. Mendota Mental Health, as Mark remembers, many of you in this room are familiar with the system, used to be a facility in which we can convey persons under a Chapter 51 mental health commitment. That is no longer an option for law enforcement. And just so you know, Chapter 51, that determination is made by the county mental health, either contract, in our case, it's contracted out to Journey Mental Health. The county has an agreement with Journey. Or the county is statutorily in control of that decision of making a mental health commitment and compelling law enforcement to do that conveyance. Mendota is no longer an option. The next nearest option is Winnebago Mental Health, Winnebago County. So your officers, if they make a conveyance from say Tellurian, which is in town in our jurisdiction, or an incident on the Beltline or wherever that we're responsible for, we have to get a physical medical clearance at a local ER. So that, Merritt or UW, wherever, have that coordination take place between that doctor and that nurse, and the Winnebago doctor and that nurse, have crisis or Journey Mental Health involved in between. And then probably 2-3 hours later, we'll get the go ahead to make that conveyance. I'm not as concerned, although that's concerning that that's taking officers off the street or having to call in tired officers to do that conveyance on the day off or when they're right before they come to work. I'm concerned about that, but I'm really concerned about the people who are in crisis, who we're placing in the backseat of a squad car that's not designed to house somebody for a 4 or 5 hour trip, okay, who are already struggling. And so as I conveyed to the wonderful lawmakers that I spoke to, that is darn near inhumane, and we need to do better. And that's just us. There are people coming from far northern agencies that have 6-7 hour commutes to Winnebago. So it's something that is in Senate bill right now. right now, and it's gaining some traction, but we'll see where that goes. I got two more things, Brian.
No, it's keeping everybody here late.
Allowing recoupment for redaction costs. Here's where that's coming from. We have this wonderful technology that you all have provided us, body worn camera, in-car video camera. That is subject to open records, which means that by law, because there's Privacy Act laws and there's HIPAA and all this other information that we have to abide by, where we require redaction. We pretty much now have one person that does our redaction, our wonderful assistant chief, that handles the vast majority of the redaction. And unfortunately, we cannot fast forward redaction. So when you're talking about an hour's worth of video just from one officer, you're literally having to go through the redaction minute by minute of information such as blurring faces of children or muting out, personal health information and things like that, that is captured on our in-car videos and our body worn camera. So what we're asking for is a reimbursement cost for the time it takes to conduct that work. And the time that's considered is how it's proposed to occur is the least paid employee within that department, or the lowest paid, I should say, employee of that department. It's that hourly rate. So ours currently is $25 an hour per hour, however long it takes to do the redaction work. Now, this isn't, I think there have been, there's always various versions of why the police have asked for this. What I am telling you, why we're asking for this is because when small agencies, when we have numerous requests, nationwide requests, by the way, that we're obligated under law to address, or else all of you wonderful folks are get sued. It takes time, and it takes time away from the things the assistant chief needs to be doing, or other staff who are untrained can't do, because it costs money to send people to train on open records and to be certified to conduct sort of redaction work. We're asking to recoup some of those costs. I love the fact that we have one of the most sort of liberal is a bad word in terms of what I'm trying to say, but free open records laws in of any of the 50 states. Think of the CCAP, and you can't get CCAP in my home state of Illinois. There's pros and cons to that, by the way, but I love the fact that we are so open. I think that it adds to public transparency and public trust, and that's great. It comes with a cost, and it's coming with a significant cost to your police department and other police departments like us. Madison, I think, has like a 6-month waiting period for their open records requests right now.
Full-time people.
And they have literally full-time people that do that job.
And they still get sued.
And yes, they still get sued. So this is us this is all the chiefs in the state that are sort of bonded on these 4 central issues, and that's one of the ones that we've asked. So we don't know what exactly that's going to look like, but it's currently in Senate bill form right now, and I think it's out of its 2nd committee. The counter to that, which I would argue is not entirely accurate, is that we are somehow trying to discourage people to make open records requests. We are not. In fact, I think you all know me by now. I try to release as much information as I can. I love the fact that we have body cam videos. I try to release as much as I can and give and help provide insight into inquiries. So that's certainly not the case. And then the 4th thing is rehiring a WRS protective service annuitants. So what that means is, for those of you who are familiar with WRS, it's the double dipping law, right? What do you think? Mark, we can hire you back.
Yeah.
We can hire Mark, a former police officer, back. So no, I mean,
let's table that.
And that's getting traction as well. It's both in Senate bill form and Assembly bill form right now in the legislature. And there's
Good idea though. I mean, because I think there's a lot of people out there that would work, that are trained.
recruitment, retention. This is a prime example. If I Say for example, I retire, I'm not eligible yet, but if I retired, you know, in a month from now, and Madison College has a need for trainers, and they want somebody who has some experience to come in and train the new incoming police officers. I would have to watch how many hours I dedicate to that, or else I would be penalized in my retirement. There's a shortage of staff, there's a shortage of instructors, there's a shortage of police, experienced veteran police officers that want to come back, right? Maybe not in a full-time capacity, but they want to put some hours in and come back. They're really hindered by the current laws with WRS right now. And the teachers are the same, it's the same thing in education, fire service, it's the same thing. So they're really looking at it in terms of the double dipping law and saying, they all agreed, everyone we talked to agreed that it needs to be fixed. What that looks like is kind of what's being debated on right now. And then the last thing, unrelated to that, the last thing I'll mention, I sent an email to all of you, and I'm pretty sure everyone is aware of the fatal crash that occurred on January 1st, in which now it's out, one of your supervisors was engaged in a vehicle pursuit. Our internal investigation on that is complete. The sergeant was deemed to be following policy, and was obeying the law. And as I said publicly and in council, the work that sergeant was doing, excuse me, I'm getting choked up. I've been talking a lot, it's late. Was the work I think that this community expects them to do. I am not in control of information out right now. That is the Department of Justice. There are many things I want to share. There's many things I want to say. There's video I want to give to the public. I cannot do that without hindering and obstructing the investigation of the Department of Justice. I don't have a great question that Alder Bernstein asked at the last council meeting was sort of a timeline. I don't have that, nor have I asked DOJ for that, because I don't want to pressure them in any way to sort of speed up the process. So in essence, we've given them everything we have, the full feathered access to this police department. We've been in constant communication when they have called and asked for things. We've provided them with anything that we're able to provide them. It is under investigation by the DOJ, an independent investigation. And so we will release information as we can, as we're able. You're probably going to hear it from the DOJ before me, but we will add any supplemental information to whatever they share. If you look on their website and you go to officer involved critical incidents and you see their list of reports from their investigations, I would anticipate that you're going to see sort of similar content. They give pretty sort of detailed information on some of their all of their investigations. So if there's anything we can add and to supplement any questions or to help address any questions stemming from this incident, we're going to be able to do so. The sergeant has been, because it's such a traumatic event, and I care about our people, as you all care about your people, I made sure that the supervisor has all the tools in the chest that they need to return back to work, mentally, physically. And we've trusted the professionals to tell me we're good to go. I checked in with that individual, and we're now going to return that sergeant back to work. Any questions that I may or may not be able to answer from members of the committee regarding that?
And I don't know anything about the investigation. It just seems to me that DOJ with these communities could at least let out a little bit of information, because it puts you in a bad spot where everybody's second guessing, well, what's going on? Something must be going on. And I know they have a tough job and they've got a lot of these to do, unfortunately, but it puts, I think, somebody, especially like yourself, in a bad spot that you can't at least give a little bit to kind of say, okay, well, this kind of makes a little bit more sense now.
Right.
Instead of we're all just sitting and waiting around. And I don't know what kind of investigation they have, but
I don't want to say that there haven't been communications between myself and the DOJ public information officer about releasing information. There have been. In fact, there have been requests about hey, I'm going to say this, or I'd like to say this, or would you mind releasing information that when you're comfortable about the reason for the traffic stop? I did not, in my release and what I've shared out there, I did not use the word suspicious. DOJ used the word suspicious. Is that a factor in all of this? I don't know if I would use that specific word. I would say a trained observation, not necessarily suspicious, and the act of reckless driving, right? And so the reason for the stop or the attempted stop was the act of reckless driving. The supervisor was drawn to the behavior of the vehicle and the driver of the behavior of the vehicle, and then observed the act of reckless driving. I would have worded it, I would have elaborated, I would have worded it sooner, but again, I asked for DOJ to conduct this investigation, independent investigation. I thought that that was in the best interest of this community, I don't know if DOJ, because they're a state agency and they're independent, they could have done this anyway on their own, as you know. I don't know if they would have, but they have, it's obviously within their right to do it. I am trying to respect their process as best as I can, and sitting on my hands and covering my mouth as best as I can, knowing that there's this need for additional information that the public has been asking for, and the families frankly have been asking for. I will tell you that when the information is released, you're gonna have folks that say, I think, this is just my guess, say, that makes sense. And then you're gonna have folks that frankly say, I disagree entirely, because, for example, disagree with our policy on pursuing vehicles entirely, right? So I've met with several members of the Monona community, but also several members of the Madison community and outside of Monona on this topic, and that's been the consistent theme. I wish we could have more information, and I share in that sentiment.
What was that website where the similar reports are?
If you go to the Department of Justice, Division of Criminal Investigation, DCI, and it's under their officer involved critical incidents or their previous investigations tab.
Officer involved.
Critical incidents.
Okay, thank you.
Our next scheduled meeting. Late February, the 28th.
Will you be back?
I will be here for that.
I don't know if you'll be happy, but you'll be here.
I'll be here. Hopefully it's darker with some sun, same amount of smiles. So.
You are.
Yeah, I think I'm still. Well, like both chair could. I know they're in the dust.
Oh, I guess so. I need a motion for adjournment.
Motion to adjourn.
Second.
I'm sorry, that was Joe and then.
Yep, Chris.
Okay, thank you, Chris.
All right, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
Aye.
Awesome, thank you.
Thank you, Larry and Mary Ann and Bisbee and.
Good night, folks.
South County.
Thank you.